The galaxy was vast, full of worlds and civilizations, each with their own rules, strengths, and weaknesses. Trade routes tied many systems together, but in the darker corners of space, there was another kind of business: mercenary work. Armies for hire, fleets for rent, assassins and saboteurs, all moving in the shadows. It was a dangerous life, but one that paid well for those brave enough to risk it. On the outer rim of the Orion Belt, in a station called Rexor's Haven, mercenaries of every kind gathered. The station was old and poorly maintained, but it was safe ground. Rival mercenary groups could drink, repair their ships, and meet clients without fear of sudden betrayal, at least most of the time. One evening, whispers spread through the crowded cantina of the station. A contract had appeared on the underworld. Networks, one so large in payment that it instantly drew attention. The amount was enough to buy entire fleets, to retire 1,000 mercenary crews, or even to purchase territory within civilized core systems. For mercenaries who usually struggled to cover repairs, the sum was almost unreal. The target, however, made the room go quiet. Human Special Forces, the client had written. At first, many laughed. The idea sounded absurd. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest nor the most technologically advanced. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, only a few centuries into space travel. Many species looked at them as reckless explorers, too stubborn to know when to stay away from danger. But as the laughter died down, silence grew heavy. The older mercenaries, the ones with scars and missing limbs, exchanged uneasy looks. Some put down their drinks. A few even left the cantina entirely, because the veterans knew something the younger mercenaries did not. Stories of failure. In the corner of the bar, an insectoid mercenary named Zadrak spoke in a low tone to a group of curious recruits. His voice was thin and clicking, but the young ones leaned close to hear every word. "You think it is easy? You think they are soft prey?" he asked. His black eyes reflected the neon lights above the bar. "I once flew with a crew that tried. We thought the same as you, that humans were only flesh and bone, no different than us, that their technology was average, that their tactics could be outsmarted." "What happened?" a reptilian rookie asked. Zadrak's mandibles twitched. "We lost. Not slowly, not honorably. We lost everything before we even understood what had happened. Our ambush turned into their ambush. Our ships were already known to them. Our codes were broken. They walked through our defenses as if they had rehearsed it 1,000 times." The recruits were silent. Across the room, another voice joined in. A tall, wolf-like alien with gray, fur-named Corin growled softly. "He speaks the truth. I too fought against them once. My warlord paid our pack heavily to intercept human commandos on a desert world. They were only 12 soldiers. We were hundreds. Do you know what happened?" No one answered. "They hunted us," Corin said simply. "At night we heard them, moving. Then silence. By morning one of our camps would be gone. No bodies, no survivors, just silence. When we tried to flee, our ships exploded before we could board them. In the end, I was the only one who lived. And only because I played dead under the bodies of my packmates." The room was tense now. The young mercenaries who moments before had seen only credits and glory now felt a cold weight in their stomachs. They had heard rumors before, but hearing veterans describe it made the stories feel real. The temptation, despite the fear, the contract was still there. Credits beyond measure. Enough to tempt even the most cautious crews, a client willing to pay. Such sums would not disappear quickly. Already groups were whispering in hidden corners, considering the impossible. Some thought it might be worth the risk. Perhaps the stories were exaggerated. Perhaps humans were skilled, but not invincible. At one of the tables, a small crew of mercenaries argued. Their leader, a green-scaled alien named Rithan, leaned forward. "We cannot ignore this chance," he insisted. "With that payment, we could leave this life forever. No more cheap contracts, no more fixing engines with scraps. We could buy our own moon and live as kings." His second in command, a bird-like female named Tala, shook her head. You are blind. Do you not hear what they are saying? Every crew that tried before us was destroyed. If we take this job, we will not live long enough to spend the credits. But maybe they were fools, Rathan countered. We are smarter. We plan better. If we study their methods, we can win. Another mercenary at the table whispered, or we will end as shadows in someone else's story. The fear grows over. The next cycles, Rexer's Haven buzzed with the same debate. The contract spread from system to system, whispered in every mercenary den, every hidden outpost, every black market hub. And everywhere it went, the result was the same. At first excitement, then fear, then silence. The payment was high, but no one accepted. Because wherever mercenaries gathered, old stories returned. One tale spoke of a fleet of 50 ships destroyed by only 3 human corvettes, their weapons, out of ammunition halfway through the battle. Yet they still won by boarding enemy ships and turning their own cannons against them. Another told of assassins hired to infiltrate a human base. They never even reached the gates. Cameras caught them long before and they vanished, never seen again. The strangest tale was of a mercenary captain who swore he saw a human soldier staring directly into his command ship's camera feed. Not looking at the screen, not at the lens, at him, as though the human knew exactly where he was, even across the void of space. By now, even the youngest mercenaries began to understand. This was not just another job. This was something else entirely. The decision of the guilds in a quiet chamber aboard Rexer's Haven. Leaders of several mercenary guilds met. These were not rookies or desperate wanderers, but veterans who controlled fleets, contracts, and wealth. If anyone would accept such a job, it would be them. The room was dark, lit only by a circular table and the hollow projector in its center. The contract glowed in blue light, the payment numbers almost blinding. "Will any of you take it?" asked one guildmaster, a hulking, four-armed alien. Silence answered him. Another spoke. "We have all heard the stories. We have all lost men to them. This is not work. This is suicide." A third growled. "Then let us declare it forbidden. If one fool accepts, he risks not only his crew, but all of us. Every failure strengthens the human's legend. Every attempt makes us weaker." There were nods around the table. And so, in hushed voices, the guildmasters decided. The contract would be blacklisted. No mercenary under their banners would accept it. The humans were not to be touched, not by them, not by anyone. The whisper becomes a rule. Back in the cantina, the recruits still ask questions. Why are they so feared? They are only one species among thousands. What makes them different? Zadrak, the insectoid veteran, looked at them with dark eyes. Because they are something we do not understand. They fight not only with weapons but with their minds. They never stop. They never yield. And when they are told to guard something or someone, nothing in this galaxy can move them aside. He leaned closer, his voice a whisper that carried more weight than a shout. That is why no mercenary will take this job. Not now. Not ever. The recruits nodded slowly. The laughter from earlier was gone, replaced by a quiet unease. And so the story spread. Across spaceports, across hidden dens, across mercenary fleets. The contract remained open, the credits untouched. A shining lure for the greedy, but no hands reached for it. Because even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, where lives were cheap and danger was normal, one truth was becoming clear. The contract still sat on the hidden networks, glowing like a trap. Its numbers were huge, enough to tempt anyone. And though most mercenaries laughed nervously and turned away, greed always found someone willing to gamble. On a drifting station, near the borders of Vanar space, a coalition of mercenary captains finally gave in to the temptation. They were not fools. They had heard the warnings, the stories of lost fleets and vanished assassins. But they told themselves that those crews had been careless or unlucky. They believed they could succeed where others had failed. Their leader was Captain Dravik, a tall, scarred alien from the Grath species. His skin was dark gray, his eyes sharp and full of ambition. Dravik was known for bold strikes and clever traps. He had won battles that others thought impossible, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had cheated death too many times. Around him sat his allies, 4 other captains, each commanding their own ships and crews. Together, they controlled nearly 30 vessels, enough to crush pirate fleets or small planetary defenses. "We take this job," Dravik said firmly, his claws tapping against the metal table. "We plan it carefully. We study the humans like hunters studying prey. If others failed, it is because they underestimated them. We will not make that mistake." The others hesitated, but one by one, greed pulled them in. They all agreed. Preparing. The trap for weeks the Coalition studied. They gathered every piece of data they could find on human special forces, reports, recordings, rumors, and scattered witness accounts. They learned that humans often fought in small numbers, using speed and precision instead of overwhelming force. They learned that humans adapted quickly, turning enemy mistakes into advantages. And they learned that human soldiers often trained on their homeworld, which many alien biologists classified as a death world, a place full of predators, harsh climates, and constant danger. "This explains their resilience," muttered one of the captains during a briefing. "On a world like that, survival becomes instinct. No wonder they fight the way they do." Dravik only nodded. "Then we use their strengths against them. We will predict their tactics. We will not fight them on the ground. We will corner them in space where numbers matter more." Their plan was simple but deadly. The humans they were targeting were operating in a contested system near the edges of the Draenor cluster. The Coalition would fake a distress call, luring the human strike team into what appeared to be an easy rescue mission. Once the humans arrived, the mercenaries would spring their trap, surrounding them with superior numbers and firepower, cutting off escape. Everything was calculated, every move rehearsed. The captains were sure this time would be different. The ambush begins days. Later, the trap was set. A false signal echoed through the cluster, a plea for help from a stranded civilian transport. When the humans answered, the mercenaries were ready. From the darkness of space, 30 ships lit their engines, moving into position. Heavy cruisers blocked the jump routes. Fast raiders closed in from the sides. Bombers lurked behind asteroids ready to strike. Dravik stood on his bridge, his eyes locked on the holomap. "They will not escape this time," he said. His crew cheered, their claws and mandibles clicking with excitement. Then, on the edge of the system, the human ship arrived. It was smaller than they expected, only a frigate-class vessel. Its design was plain, nothing impressive compared to the sleek warships of other species. Some of Dravik's allies even laughed at the sight. "This is what everyone fears?" one captain scoffed. "A single ship? This will be easy." But Dravik frowned. Something felt wrong. Strange movements. The human frigate did not fly like other ships. It moved cautiously, scanning the area, as if it already suspected a trap. Then, instead of rushing to the distress signal, it slowed and began to change course. Its path zigzagged in strange, unpredictable ways, like it was dancing through invisible lines. "Why are they moving like that?" one of Dravik's officers asked. Before Dravik could answer, a sudden alarm blared on his console. His bomber group, hidden behind the asteroids, had gone silent. No distress signals, no last words, just silence. "What happened to them?" another captain shouted. Dravik's claws clenched. The humans knew. They knew about the ambush. On the screen, the human frigate suddenly accelerated, turning directly toward one of the mercenary cruisers. At first it looked like madness, a tiny ship charging a giant. But then its weapons fired not at the cruiser itself, but at the engines of a smaller escort ship nearby. The escort exploded, drifting into the path of the cruiser, blocking its line of fire. Before the mercenaries could recover, the human frigate was gone, vanishing into the shadow of a nearby moon. Panic spreads. The Coalition tried to regroup, but chaos spread quickly. ships began reporting strange malfunctions, targeting systems failing, engines refusing commands, communications filled with static. Some swore they heard human voices in their comms, whispering warnings that froze their blood. Impossible, Dravik growled. They are only one ship. How can they do this? But deep inside he knew. Humans had a way of fighting that was more than just weapons. They used fear itself as a weapon. They made their enemies doubt, hesitate, and crumble from within. One by one, the coalition's ships began to fall. Not in great explosions, but in humiliating defeats. Systems hacked, crews panicked, engines sabotaged. The human frigate appeared and disappeared like a phantom, striking at weak points, vanishing before a counterattack could land. The mercenaries fired blindly into space, desperate to hit something. But the humans were always one step ahead. The collapse hours passed, though it felt like days. The coalition fleet, once 30 strong, was reduced to scattered wrecks and fleeing survivors. Dravik's own cruiser shuddered under damage, its shields failing. His officers begged him to retreat, but escape routes were blocked, their jump drives somehow disabled. How? Dravik whispered, staring at the map. How did they know every move we would make? How could they be ready for everything? As if answering, the human frigate appeared directly in front of his bridge viewport. Its cannons glowed, but it did not fire. Instead, a single transmission came through, calm, steady, and terrifying. Go home. That was all. 2 simple words. Then the frigate vanished again, leaving Dravik's cruiser crippled but alive. The aftermath. The survivors limped back to Rexor's haven, broken and humiliated. Out of 30 ships, only 7 made it back. Crews were shaken, some refusing to speak at all. Others muttered about shadows in the dark, about humans who could see the future. When Dravik entered the cantina, silence fell. Everyone could see the defeat in his eyes. They knew, he said simply, his voice heavy. They knew everything. Every trap, every move. We were never hunting them. They were hunting us. No one laughed this time. No one dared. A new fear, the tale of Dravik's defeat, spread quickly across the galaxy. Every mercenary outpost, every hidden base, every dark corner of the underworld repeated the story. Some said the humans had spies everywhere. Others believed they had technology beyond imagination. A few whispered that humans could sense danger before it happened, like predators stalking prey. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. No mercenary wanted that contract anymore, because the coalition had been strong, clever, and well prepared. Yet they were destroyed by a single human ship. The galaxy was full of stories. Most were half-truths, twisted by rumor or exaggerated by those who had only heard them secondhand. But every now and then, a story carried the weight of truth so heavy that no one dared laugh at it. The failed ambush led by Captain Dravik was one of those stories. His coalition had gone in with 30 ships. They returned with only 7, their crews broken, their courage stripped away. That story spread like wildfire. Soon mercenary bars and shadow markets across the Orion Belt, the Draenor Cluster, and even the inner worlds carried the same whispered tale. Mercenaries who had never even seen a human began to nod seriously when someone spoke of them. The legend was growing, shaping itself into something larger than life. Whispers in the cantina at Rexor's haven, the same cantina where the contract had first been mentioned. Mercenaries once again gathered. The air was thick with smoke and the sound of quiet voices. A group of young recruits huddled around a grizzled veteran named Torik, a scarred reptilian with scales cracked from years of battle. He was half blind, but his voice carried power. They do not fight like others, Torik explained. They do not think in straight lines. When you fight them, it is as if they already know what you are about to do. One recruit tilted his head. But how? Do they have spies? Do they read minds? Torik chuckled, though it sounded more like a cough. No, they watch, they study, and they learn faster than anyone else I have ever seen. You make a move once, they will never fall for it again. You fight them with numbers, they turn your numbers into a weakness. You try to scare them, and they turn that fear back on you. The recruits looked uneasy. Another mercenary at the bar, a wolf-like alien named Corin who had told his own tale before, growled softly. Do not waste your time wondering how. Just know this. When you face them, your death is already written. Recruits went quiet. The legend was seeping into them. Rumors across the stars, in other systems, stories grew stranger. On a mining colony in the Taylor Fringe, a drunken mercenary claimed he had fought a unit of humans and survived. According to him, the humans had no fear of pain. Even when wounded, they kept moving, kept fighting, their eyes fixed on their goal like machines. He swore that one human soldier, bleeding and half collapsed, still dragged his comrade to safety before firing his weapon with perfect aim. On the trade hub of Venar Prime, an old pirate told another tale. He said human soldiers laughed during battles, even when outnumbered, even when their ships were breaking apart. They laugh, he whispered, because they already know who will win. Others said humans trained on a world where the air itself tried to kill them, where storms tore cities apart, where predators stalked them from birth. If they survive such a world, one smuggler said, then fighting in space must feel easy to them. The details were uncertain, the facts twisted, but the message was the same everywhere. Do not cross human special forces, a rising reputation. The contract still remained on the hidden networks, its numbers larger than anything ever offered before, but now it served more as a warning than a temptation. Mercenary guilds quietly began to market with a symbol. A simple triangle with 3 lines crossing through it, unspoken code that meant forbidden job. No guild would allow their members to take it. No captain would risk their crew. Even warlords began to take notice. A few had considered forcing mercenaries to attack the humans, but when they heard Dravik's story and others like it, they thought twice. Warlords could replace mercenaries easily enough, but what if their own fleet suffered the same fate? The cost was too high. Thus, a strange shift began. In a galaxy where credits ruled all, where mercenaries would fight anyone for the right price, a quiet exception was forming. Humans were off limits. The spy's account one evening, at a hidden dockyard near the edge of the Myros Nebula, a spy named Seelith told her story. She had once been hired to track a human unit, to learn their patterns and weaknesses. I followed them for months, she explained to a group of smugglers. I thought I was invisible. I used cloaked drones, hidden relays, silent signals. I was proud of my work. What happened? One smuggler asked. Seelith's voice grew thin. One night I returned to my ship, and inside, waiting for me in the dark, was one of them, a human. He did not harm me. He only spoke. What did he say? She swallowed hard. He said, we knew you were watching. Tell your masters to stop. And then, he left. I do not know how he came aboard my ship. I do not know how he left. But I knew then that I was alive only because he allowed it. The smugglers exchanged uneasy glances. None doubted her. Legends become law as more tales spread. Mercenary guilds began to formalize the fear. Written rules were posted in secret halls. No contracts against human special forces. Any captain who breaks this rule will be cast out. The reason was not mercy nor respect. It was survival. No guild could afford to lose its best crews chasing an impossible job. Some younger mercenaries scoffed, calling it cowardice. They claimed the stories were exaggerated, that humans were only mortal like everyone else. But when they demanded proof, the older mercenaries showed them the records of fleets that had vanished, names of captains who never returned, contracts that ended in silence. And slowly, even the doubters went quiet. A meeting of warlords far away. In the cold halls of a fortress world, several warlords gathered. They were not mercenaries but rulers, each commanding armies of their own. They spoke of expansion, of conquest, of rivals who stood in their way. One warlord suggested hiring mercenaries to deal with human forces that had begun protecting certain trade routes, but the others shook their heads. No mercenary will take such a job, one said. Then we will send our own fleets, another suggested. But the eldest warlord leaned forward, his voice low. I have lived long enough to know when a foe is not to be touched. I tell you this, leave the humans alone. They are small now, but if we push them, they will grow teeth sharper than any of ours. Already mercenaries fear them. Soon, entire armies will. The chamber went quiet. Even warlords who had never feared anyone else found themselves considering the warning. Stories in the shadows back in the underworld, the stories only grew. Some mercenaries whispered that humans did not fight alone, that their machines, their ships, even their very shadows fought with them. Others said they could survive in places no one else could. Burning deserts, frozen wastes, poisoned skies. A few even believed humans had something more, an invisible strength, something beyond weapons or tactics, a spirit perhaps, or a willpower, that no other species could match. Whatever the truth, the legend spread too far to be stopped. The recruits' Fearon, a small outpost near the Kelvar Rim, a young mercenary named Rylan sat with his crew. They were fresh, eager, ready for their first real contracts. But when the subject of humans came up, his hands shook. My brother served in a fleet that tried to fight them, he confessed. He was not a coward. He fought bravely, but when their fleet returned, he was not with them. And no one would tell me how he died. They only said the humans got him. His voice broke. When even killers cannot explain how you fell, then I want no part of it. His crew, once eager, nodded silently. None argued. A reputation. Sealed by now, the idea was unshakable. Human special forces were no longer seen as just soldiers. They were legends, ghosts, hunters of the hunters. The contract that had once promised riches now sat like a curse, untouched and avoided. For mercenaries who lived for credits, who fought without loyalty or honor, this silence was louder than any law. It meant one thing. The humans had won a battle without firing a shot, by turning their enemies' fear into armor. And so, the galaxy began to live by a new unspoken rule. Not written in treaties, not carved in stone, but carried in every whisper, every nervous glance, every decision left unmade. No one takes a job against human special forces, because legends once born are stronger than any contract. The legend of human special forces had spread so far that it reached even the ears of warlords who normally paid no attention to mercenary whispers. In their strongholds, armored rulers scoffed at stories told by half-drunk mercenaries in smoky bars. To them, fear was weakness, and legends were only excuses for failure. But one warlord, Lord Vakar, grew tired of hearing about humans. He ruled over 6 systems at the edge of the Kyros expanse, his fleets feared by traders and smugglers alike. Yet his merchants complained that human forces were blocking his raids, securing trade lanes and protecting colonies that once paid tribute to him. When his advisors warned him that no mercenary would accept a contract against human special forces, he laughed. Then I will not ask, Vakar growled. I will command. Forced into service, Vakar summoned every mercenary group under his control. Some served him willingly, others reluctantly, but all were bound by his power. His fleets outnumbered them 10 to 1, and no one dared refuse his call. In total, he gathered nearly 1,000 mercenaries, pilots, raiders, saboteurs, and ground fighters. It was the largest force ever assembled against a single human unit. You will not speak of fear, Vakar declared from his throne of black steel. You will not repeat childish stories. You will obey. The humans have stolen from me, and I will see them crushed. With our numbers, they cannot survive. The mercenaries bowed their heads, but whispers passed between them when the warlord could not hear. They all knew what happened to Dravik's coalition. They all remembered the forbidden contract. Yet none could escape Vakar's command, and so the unwilling army prepared for battle. The target, the humans were stationed on Arden 4, a barren world of deserts and mountains. On the surface, it seemed unimportant, but its orbit lay along a trade corridor vital to Vakar's raids. If the humans held it, His fleets would suffer heavy losses every time they moved through the region. Intelligence reports showed only a small human special forces unit, perhaps 30 soldiers, supported by a single frigate in orbit. To Vekar, it looked like weakness. To the mercenaries, it looked like the calm before a storm. Invasion begins. The attack came at dawn. Hundreds of mercenary ships descended through the thin atmosphere of Arden 4, their engines blazing against the sky. Dropships poured out carrying soldiers armed with heavy weapons. On the ground, dust storms howled across the desert, but the mercenaries pressed forward, their scanners searching for human positions. At first, the battlefield was quiet. Too quiet. Then, the first strike hit. Shadows in the storm from the ridges above, human weapons opened fire, not in wild volleys but in precise bursts. Each shot found its target, disabling vehicles, cutting down squad leaders, and collapsing supply carriers. The mercenaries tried to return fire, but the humans vanished back into the dust. When the attackers advanced, they found only empty ground, footprints already erased by the storm. Then explosions ripped through their rear lines. Ammunition caches detonated, dropships burst into flames, and communication towers toppled before anyone understood what was happening. "They are everywhere," one mercenary shouted into his comm. But when the smoke cleared, no enemy could be seen. Only silence broken by the wind. Fear in the ranks as hours passed. Confusion spread like disease. Mercenary units lost contact with each other. Supply lines vanished. Some soldiers swore they saw human shapes moving in the storm, only to find nothing when they fired. In one camp, soldiers awoke to find their weapons stolen in the night. In another, engines refused to start, their power cells missing. "It is impossible," a captain whispered. "How can 30 soldiers dismantle an army?" The answer came in whispers over the comm. A human voice, calm and sharp. "Go home." The same words Dravik had once heard. Now, thousands of mercenaries heard them too. The night of fire. When darkness fell, the real nightmare began. The humans struck with silent precision. Mines appeared where no one had seen them before. Patrols vanished without a sound. Whole platoons woke to find their commanders gone. Some mercenaries panicked, firing wildly, into the storm. Others abandoned their posts and fled into the desert, never to return. Lord Vekar raged in his command ship, shouting at his captains to restore order. But every order he gave was delayed, intercepted, or somehow already countered. The humans seemed to know his plans before he even spoke them. Collapse of an army. By the third day, the mercenary army was broken. Units scattered in every direction, desperate to escape. Ships tried to flee orbit only to find their engines sabotaged or their coordinates corrupted. The human frigate above Arden 4 never fired its main cannons, but its presence alone was enough. Every mercenary knew it was watching, waiting, guiding the chaos below. Vekar himself tried to rally his troops, but when his personal guards were cut down in the night, his courage crumbled. He retreated to his fortress ship, fleeing the battlefield. His grand army, built to crush 30 humans, had destroyed itself. Survivors speak weeks later. Broken survivors limped back to outposts and stations across the galaxy. Their stories spread. Faster than any warlord's lies, they were only shadows, one said, trembling. "We never saw them until it was too late. They destroyed us with fear," another muttered. "They broke our minds before they broke our bodies." Others spoke of voices in the dark, of weapons that fired with impossible accuracy, of traps that appeared exactly where they stepped. Every survivor agreed on one thing: the humans had shown mercy. They could have killed everyone, but they chose not to. Instead, they let fear do the work. The death of a warlord's power lord. Vekar returned to his throne world, but his power was gone. His fleets deserted him. His mercenaries refused his commands, and his rivals mocked him. The warlord who once laughed at legends now lived in silence, his name a warning to others. And across the galaxy, mercenaries repeated the story with grim certainty. If even 1,000 of us could not defeat 30 humans, then who among us would dare try again? A rule carved in fear from that day: The unspoken rule became carved into every mercenary code. It was no longer just a whisper, it was law. No one takes jobs against human special forces. Not because the pay was too small, not because the work was dishonorable, but because survival itself depended on refusal. The humans had achieved what no army had done before. They had ended the war before it began, by making their enemies destroy themselves. And in every dark corner of the galaxy, mercenaries remembered the storm of Arden IV, the final gambit that proved once and for all. The galaxy never forgot Arden IV. Stories of the human special forces' victory over thousands of mercenaries spread faster than any fleet could travel. Across star systems, from the dens of smugglers to the halls of powerful warlords, the same warning echoed: do not fight humans. For mercenaries, it became a truth that could not be denied. Even when a contract promised fortunes beyond imagining, no one dared accept a job against human special forces. And yet the humans did not hunt for glory or fear. They simply existed, performing their missions with quiet efficiency, letting their legend grow in every whispered tale. Fear turns to respect in Rexer's Haven. The cantina remained alive with conversation, though its tone had shifted. Mercenaries no longer laughed at human stories. They shared them, nodding seriously at each detail. A young recruit, Lyra, leaned forward to ask a veteran named Torek about the humans she had never seen. "They are only soldiers, aren't they?" she asked. "How can so few make so many fall?" Torek smiled grimly. "They are soldiers, yes, but they fight with more than strength or weapons. They fight with strategy, with courage, with something I have never seen in any other species. And when they choose to strike, nothing can stop them." Another mercenary added, "I heard they don't need to win every fight. Sometimes their victory is in making the enemy break themselves." The recruits exchanged glances. Fear had grown into respect. Stories across the stars in the outer rims, mercenaries whispered the latest tales. One pilot told of a human team infiltrating a warlord's outpost. They had no fleet, no reinforcements, yet the warlord's strongest guard surrendered without firing a shot. Another told of a transport convoy ambushed by what seemed like hundreds of human soldiers. When the mercenary reinforcements arrived, they found no bodies, no wreckage, only signs that humans had disabled all weapons and equipment and vanished before detection. Even the boldest mercenaries, who had once sought fame through dangerous contracts, began to understand. Humans were a force unlike any other, and everywhere the same lesson was learned: do not fight them. Warlords learned the hard way. Lord Vakar's failure on Arden IV became a permanent lesson for all ambitious rulers. He never recovered his fleets, and rival warlords often reminded him of his humiliation. One warlord laughed openly in his hall, recounting the stories of Vakar's army that had disintegrated without a single human shot fired. Other rulers took heed. They no longer tried to send armies against humans even when humans stood in their way. Instead, they negotiated, bribed, or avoided confrontation. In this way, humans changed the rules of war, not by conquest, but by creating a reputation so formidable that no one would dare oppose them directly. The mercenary guilds formalized the unspoken rule. It became a part of their code: no contract shall involve human special forces. Any captain who tried to accept such a job faced expulsion, loss of rank, and permanent blacklisting. Even freelance mercenaries who worked outside guilds understood the risk. Reputation mattered in the mercenary world. A crew known for attacking. Humans would find themselves shunned, avoided, or destroyed by other mercenaries. Thus, a balance emerged. Humans did not need to fight constantly. Their reputation alone kept fleets, armies, and mercenary crews at bay. Training for the future on their homeworld, human special forces continued to train relentlessly. They knew their reputation was a tool as powerful as any weapon. They trained in the deserts, the frozen peaks, and the dense forests of Earth, preparing for every possible danger. Off-world, human soldiers operated in small teams, performing reconnaissance, defense, and high-risk missions with precision. Their ships were unassuming but well-equipped. Their weapons were effective, their tactics unpredictable. They did not seek recognition, and they rarely bragged. But their very existence sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humans are not prey. Humans are hunters. A galaxy-wide lesson. As decades passed, the stories only grew. Young mercenaries were taught the legends as warnings. Ships approaching contested sectors were advised to avoid known human patrols. Even warlords began to mark maps with caution symbols, noting where human forces operated. Trade corridors, once plagued by piracy, became safer, not because of treaties, but because the humans' presence deterred attacks. Entire systems learned that confronting human special forces meant certain failure. In this way, humanity carved out a reputation larger than empires, more enduring than fleets, and more powerful than money. The moral of the tale: mercenaries, warlords, and even spies came to realize that power was not only in numbers, weapons, or technology. Sometimes it was in skill, courage, and strategy. Sometimes it was in the ability to make your enemies fear you before battle even began. The humans had achieved what few others could, a legend that protected their interests, defended colonies, and prevented wars, all without constant combat. Their reputation alone reshaped galactic politics, mercenary work, and the calculations of rulers. Even alien mercenaries, those who had once taken contracts without hesitation, would not consider a single job against humans. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. Some battles are won before the first shot is fired. A quiet vigil far from the legends and whispers, the human special forces continued their work. On the edges of space, on distant planets, in orbiting stations, they moved silently, performing their missions with calm efficiency. To them, the stories and whispers did not matter. They did not seek glory or fear. They only prepared, trained, and acted when duty required. Yet for the rest of the galaxy, those quiet actions spoke louder than any boast. Humans are not to be challenged. Humans are not to be hunted. Humans are to be respected, feared, and if possible, avoided. And so, a new rule of war was born. Not written in treaties, not enforced by armies, but carried in every whisper, every nervous glance, every calculation made by those who would challenge. The stars. Even alien mercenaries will not take jobs targeting human special forces, because the humans had proven something older and stronger than fleets or firepower. Skill, courage, and determination could make legends, and legends could shape the galaxy. The legacy centuries later, human legends were still alive in mercenary halls, trade stations, and warlord strongholds. The stories of Arden IV, Dravik's failed coalition, and countless other near miracles were repeated to warn new recruits. Humans never needed to chase fame. Their actions spoke for themselves. A handful of soldiers, disciplined, fearless, and cunning, had rewritten the rules of war. The galaxy understood it clearly. Some forces are not to be challenged. Some soldiers are more than warriors, they are legends,